Okay, good morning, everybody. This is Steve Sabanowski, publisher of BuyUBuzz.com. And it's Friday morning, 8 o'clock or close to it. And so Rob, Maness, and I are here to discuss Louisiana politics, the Louisiana Legislature, last days of the session. That's session number 3 for the year. And we'll also try to talk about some of the national issues that are exploding at this point in time. And so, good morning, Colonel Maness. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Steve. Good morning. We've moved on from the cornfields of Iowa, fields of Indiana for our farm business meeting, our own farm. So we're coming to you from the farm of Indiana.
Okay, well, great. The farm of Indiana. So, what's happening there in Indiana?
Well, not much really. We're getting some rain, and that's about it. And the corn is about waist high, right outside my window here, and that's looking good for us. So
Great, great. But rain is not very good.
no.
Sure. Okay, so if anybody has a question or want to make a comment, please go ahead and do so. Again, just type the information underneath the video here. Also, let us know if the audio is doing okay. I see the pictures okay. So, again, any questions, comments, etc. Lastly, go ahead and share, the discussion so that we can get more people out there to be able to present their information. We definitely appreciate all the feedback that y'all give us. So, having said that, what the heck is going on right now in the world of Baton Rouge, Louisiana Legislature? I mean, obviously you're in Indiana, but you're keeping up with this, so tell us what's going on.
Yeah, interesting. There are 2 bills left for raising the revenue and keeping part of that 1 penny sales tax. One is Paula Davis's bill, and the other is Neil Abrams, the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee's bill. And it's between 4 cents and 5 cents, quite frankly, which is not surprising. The half-cent effort got 60 votes in the House the last specials or the last session, and so that's not surprising that that's where they're at. The other interesting thing that I saw late last night is that it looks like John Alario and Senator J.P. Morrell have put a resolution in on the Senate side late last night to just suspend the expiration of the current 1 penny sales tax. And the rumors that are going around in the media is that may not require a 70 vote threshold, a 2/3 vote threshold in the House of Representatives. So that could make things fairly exciting over the next day or so. And we'll go from there. The really surprising part, though, is that Mr. Bishop's bill was pulled by the author himself. And there were a lot of folks, including myself, when I looked at the bill from a non-partisan perspective. As you know, I'm opposed to keeping the 1 cent sales tax at all, and doing our meeting our challenges through cuts in the state budget. But looking at it from a pragmatic perspective, Bishop's bill would have kept the half a penny of the expiring sales tax, and then I believe it was every year. It would reduce that half penny down to over time, eventually down to 0. And I thought that bill, and so did a lot of other folks, had a good opportunity to make it through the House because it took a very pragmatic approach to zeroing out that half penny over time instead of just coming up to a deadline and then having to make a decision. But he pulled the bill last night. Apparently, it lost support after the Supreme Court decision on the Wayfair decision, which authorizes states to collect sales tax even though there may not be a brick or mortar presence in their state for online sales, which has been coming for a long time. I am principally opposed to that, but when you talk to brick and mortar store owners around our state, like I have, and I'm sure you have too, they just see that as a leveling of the playing field because they feel like that they have been disadvantaged because the online stores like Amazon and those kind of folks have not had to bear that burden of collecting sales tax over time. Plus, obviously it hurts their prices and those kind of things.
Sure, sure. Okay, so getting back to the Senate, why in the world would they go with suspend the expiration of the 1 penny? I mean, obviously, it seems to me it's a negotiation ploy, saying that, hey, if you don't do this, then we're going to try to just extend the expiration. And by the way, in doing that, I'm just wondering whether or not that would require the same onus of a supermajority vote.
Well, I think that's the point is that the folks that filed the bill, John Alario and Senator Morrell, don't believe that it requires a 2/3 majority vote in the House, and they have seen that they have the 60 votes for a half cent. So now the trick with this one is that they can only suspend the expiration for the entire penny. And that's likely to cause some problems in getting to the required majority, simple majority that it would the Senate folks.
Okay, we're having a little bit of internet issue, but in terms of, I guess Indiana, internet and corn and rain don't go that well together. So I do see that our friend Tim Allen Matthews asked the question, basically saying new Supreme Court ruling that you're referring to, and will it help our budget? Pardon me. So go ahead.
Well, that's a big part of the discussion from what I saw yesterday. Everybody is wondering how much it will help, if at all, the budget. It looks like most of the experts at the state level and even I believe either the Tax Foundation, the conservative American Taxpayers Union has said that for this coming fiscal year, it's not likely to have a positive impact on our revenue, and they haven't been able to make any adequate projections yet. So it's out there. It's going to have a positive impact. It's not going to do anything except for increase the amount of revenue coming in. The big question is when and how much. It puts the legislature and the governor in a tight spot because they know there's more revenue coming, but these unanswered questions are probably going to make it difficult. And I think that's part of the issue of why Bishop's bill was withdrawn and started losing support yesterday, from what I can see in all of the reporting that's going on.
Okay. It could be, we could have increased revenues coming in from a sales tax in terms of internet.
Sure.
Back in 1990s when Clinton was president, I was on TV talking about internet sales tax, it was actually ABC 26 down here in New Orleans, and the debate was, Harry Lee was pushing the idea of collecting the sales tax. At the time, my position was that you have a fledgling industry, the internet. Nobody at the time was making any money at all. We didn't know if it was going to be taken off, meaning internet business, commerce. And so one other thing, and that is that what about Europe? You put a sales tax on goods in America, internet tax, then people will just buy their goods outside of the United States. Again, no matter what you say or do, or however, it's a global economy. And so that there's some real benefit in that, some real disadvantages too. So, I just wonder whether or not, I don't know, I didn't read the decision, I'm just wondering whether or not this will help, say, other internet retailers elsewhere?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's going to help the internet retailers. I mean, some of them are already collecting sales tax
As Amazon is.
when you make purchases, as Amazon is now. But many of them, I think the biggest impact is going to be on the smaller businesses, putting that burden of the collection and accounting and redistribution to their states and those kind of things onto the individual small business retailers that do online business. That's going to be tough. And you mentioned the overseas issue. That's an extremely complex issue because you have U.S. entities that have also legal entities all around the globe. And the question will be, and I haven't had a chance to read the decision yet either. One of my questions is along the same lines as yours, Steve, and that is, what if I have a U.S. entity that is also a German entity, and my purchase is from the German entity? Is it required that the German entity now collects sales tax for the state of Louisiana, and those kind of things? So a lot of questions out there. I'm not surprised that it came. You mentioned the early 90s when I think we chose to give a break to the online retailers because they were new and nobody really knew whether they were going to make any money or not. But this change has been coming for a long time. I've pushed against it. I'm opposed to it, but it's pretty much been inevitable because it's not fair to the brick and mortar retailers that are still out there, especially the little guys and gals in the strip malls. You walk into any strip mall in St. Tammany Parish and start talking to a business owner, they're about this issue, and they're almost 100% saying, look, I can't compete if I have to compete against somebody that doesn't have to put a sales tax and do the administrative burden that comes along with that. So
Sure.
I'm not surprised that it was made that way.
Right. No, I agree. Interestingly, the person who I was debating at the time was Newell Normand. He was the top assistant for Harry Lee. And Harry Lee took the position after trying to buy a camera. And obviously the photography place told him how unfair he thought it was. And so, that was 20 years ago or so. Interesting how the evolution has occurred. So, getting us back to the state legislature, I agree. As you said, I don't think that we can rely upon those revenues. At least I don't think the legislature should rely upon them in any way. And so I think it gets back to whether or not we're going to get that half penny or 4/10 of a penny. We were talking before 1/3 of a penny. Now we're talking 4/10 of a penny versus half a penny. And you're talking about basically $1 on what you're talking about. You're talking about how much is it 10 cents per $100? I think it is, in terms of the difference between the 4/10 and half of a penny.
Yeah, I think the total is 17 cents on the dollar. That's not the way I look at it.
Yeah,
that's with the half penny.
that's a half penny in the
yeah.
1/3. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's from my perspective and the folks that believe what I believe, our version of success of this session is if somebody like Alan Seabaugh kills this effort altogether, and the state government is forced to do the right thing and forced to make the appropriate cuts without hurting people and going into their scare tactics, turning their scare tactics into operational budget cuts in those areas, and really going out and finding the real places where this budget can be cut, because we're not buying it. The snake oil salesmen that are saying you can't cut this budget when it's at $31 billion or whatever the number is, somewhere between 29.1 and $32.1 billion. that are saying you can't cut this budget without hurting old people and hurting college students and those kind of things. It's just a ridiculous proposition. And those of us that are out here on the other side of the aisle that don't believe that the state needs any more revenue, they need to get their belts tightened and start getting this budget under control. Would like to see, no half penny or 4 cents left of that sales tax. But from a pragmatic perspective, I can see where the train is going, and I'm not going to make any predictions, but I won't be surprised if we end up with keeping a half cent of that sales tax like the governor has wanted all along. Wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. So here's a question I have. I don't know if you can answer this because I don't think it's ever happened, quite frankly. At least to my knowledge, has not. And that is, what happens if the state does not pass a budget? You go into the fiscal year. Now, you're suggesting that what would happen is that, would there be an appropriation? Would there be allocation of revenues? You're saying that it would just mean that people would cut. But
we did pass a budget.
But you're not author. I'm sorry, go on.
But we did pass a budget, and the governor signed it. So the next step's going to be the appropriations, and that's where the appropriations of what funds are available is where the decisions will be made.
Okay, because if I recall correctly, the House was trying to undo that appropriations.
I'm sorry, say again?
Okay, as I recall, the House was trying to undo that appropriations to be able to get more money for TOPS, which the budget would not allow.
Yeah, there is an effort on Cameron Henry's part, the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, to make changes to that budget and pass a new bill which would fund TOPS at 90%, which I think the budget that eventually passed was only funded at 70%, if I remember correctly. So there is an effort to do that, but if they do nothing, we do have a budget that's been passed, and working and that allows the legislature and the governor's office to work within that budget and appropriate and allocate the funds that are available and make those appropriate decisions. It just forces them to allocate the funds to their real top priorities, and I think you can see a really good vision of where the top priorities are by the things that get the scare tactics used against them. Healthcare, nursing homes, the higher education, all of those things that have the big scare tactics used against them are really the top priorities at least on the governor's side, from what I can see. The really interesting thing is that transportation hasn't been getting much play in this, and our roads are some of the worst in the nation. So that's unfortunate, especially for a person like me coming from St. Tammany. I'm sure you're aware, we had a huge accident on Interstate 12 at an intersection not far from my home, that we have all known has been needed to be expanded for many, many years now, and has not been able to get the funding to do it, even with emergency requests after this fatal accident that just occurred. So that's interesting. We'll see what happens there, but I would imagine that they're going to allocate what funds are available first to those priorities, and then probably prorate it from there, from what I'm hearing.
Right. So that would mean that the universities would be taken, and the students would be taking a major hit. Like you said, 30% cut in terms of TOPS, and roughly $100 million in terms of the universities.
Well, according to that budget layout, but as I said, once the dust settles and the final issues are settled or not, then the legislature and the governor can make their absolute final decisions. There's always decisions and allocations that can be made to move money around. So you really don't know exactly what the impact will be until you get to the end of that tunnel and everybody emerges from it and we see what's really there. That's the really frustrating part about Louisiana's budget system, with the revenue estimating committee and being tied to oil revenues so much, and those kind of things. It really makes it hard for the legislature and the governor's office really to make decisions in a near real time manner as us ordinary citizens would like for them to be able to do that. So we'll see what happens. I mean, going purely by that budget, yeah, you're absolutely right. That's where those cuts would be made. But I would expect that there'd be money moved around to try to improve that as much as possible.
I think there are limits in terms of having money moved around. I think that you're talking about legislative appropriation, and I mean, for example, after, let's say, the budget doesn't go through. I'm sorry, let's just say the revenue increases do not go through, and let's just say that you have to, at least nominally adhere to that budget that was passed last session. I don't think that you can. I don't think the governor or legislature, by even through the joint committee on the budget, I don't think that they can suddenly go ahead and appropriate money for tops. Less than the 30% cut. I mean, I don't.
I think you're going to
think, and I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe they can, and if Henry's efforts are successful in this session, even without the revenue increases, they could still successfully pass changes to the budget and have those appropriations there, whether the revenue effort succeeds or not, and make changes that way too, so that they can move that money around.
Well, and the problem with that though is that it would have to be voted upon. So,
yep, that's right.
Yeah. So okay. So I'm looking at a couple more comments here. Again, Tim Allen Matthews made a good point, and that is getting back to internet taxes. And it's no longer on my screen right now, but from recollection, he said that even like the car industry, he's in the repair industry. Even that, people are buying supplies online in terms of retailers, but that's true even for the stores themselves. They're buying their products online instead of getting from the local manufacturer. So it's interesting, how even the local retailers are buying their supplies. It's my appreciation that many of them do that. So they'll use the internet to order. One other comment here is that, and this is from, looks like, I think Joni Friedrich Lagasse, says Florida has a much higher revenue stream than Louisiana. The residents have higher incomes, and their property taxes are much higher. Plus, they have many more people to add to the revenue stream. So she's responding to a comment by Tim. I didn't see Tim Allen Matthews' comment. And so, yeah, I mean, Florida, Texas, I mean, they have a whole different revenue infrastructure than does Louisiana. You there? Okay, so it looks like Rob is somehow he got knocked off the internet. I guess he didn't pay his internet taxes. I'm not sure, but I'm sure he'll be back shortly. In the meantime, I'll do a song and dance. But let's see if I can get him back. I'm sure that here he is. There you are, Rob. Are you there?
Hey, Steve, I'm back.
Okay, I was just saying that you probably didn't pay your internet tax.
Yeah.
Is that what happened?
There may be some hidden Indiana internet tax up here that we're not aware of.
I mean, really, absolutely. So.
But you're right. You're right on the. It's got to be voted on to get back to the budget issue. And either way, they will. I believe that the legislature, aside from the revenue increasing piece, there's more flexibility, I believe, on the budgeting side when it comes to Republicans in the House being willing to allocate more money to this or that program, and we'll see where they go. Again, and the frustrating part for me personally is that you just don't know where you're gonna be when you get to the end of the tunnel, regardless of all of these machinations and those kind of things. I did just get a note from Senator Sharon Hewitt on the question of the revenue bill to suspend the expiration of the 1 penny tax, and apparently the House clerk doesn't agree with the Senate secretary, and the House says a 2/3 vote
Okay.
would be required to raise taxes, and that would be the same kind of thing. So,
Okay.
so there's a disagreement between the House,
Yeah, and
House
right,
rule
exactly.
makers and the Senate rule makers. Not surprising there.
Yeah, and please thank Sharon Hewitt. Maybe we can get her on the program, and she can tell us from her perspective what's going on. I'm talking about maybe next week, something that you may want to work on. So
Sure.
let's see. Let me just look on your page to see any particular comments. Do you see any at all that you want to respond to?
No, I'm unable to see the comments today,
Okay,
unfortunately.
gotcha. Okay, so I'll go ahead and do that little search myself real quickly. I was reading those from my page. Um, so, one last question on the Louisiana Legislature and the budget. Actually, two. One is, do you sense that there's a lot of activity? Is it that the summer? I mean, it doesn't. I mean, are the phones ringing at in the legislative offices? You can maybe ask Sharon Hewitt about that. You know, are they getting inundated, or is there just sort of a blasé attitude? I mean, we're getting down to crunch time. We're talking about what 5 or 6 more days of the session.
Yeah. What I'm hearing is that those of us that watch this closely, yeah, we're communicating with our representatives in the House and the Senate. Matter of fact, Sharon's not my senator, but she's part of the North Shore delegation, and I communicate with them regularly. Same thing with our House representatives and those kind of things. And I'm not getting the sense that they're getting a lot of push from the average citizen. But I have heard that at least local businesses, the Chamber of Commerce type businesses on the North Shore, have been pushing to pass some version of of keeping that part of that sales tax penny that was passed 2 years ago that's expiring on June 30th. So some areas are pushing, others are not. There's different views in the conservative community. Those of us that are not tied to the Chamber of Commerce type businesses are adamantly opposed to keeping any of this revenue and forcing the state government to make the hard decisions that need to be made on a lot of these programs. As I've said before, programs like TOPS and the universities, there are great ideas out there on how to make effective changes to the programs so they don't require so much revenue, but
Okay, I'm sorry. You still there? Oh, okay. Again, Rob, are you there? Apparently, Rob Maness is having problems. He's in the middle of Indiana, and he's checking out the corn. The internet is not very good there, apparently, and it's raining. So, consequently, he's having some problems uh, with the internet, and so uh, that seems to be the problem. Let me go ahead and just until he returns. Rob, you still there? So until he returns, let me read some of these comments real quickly, and let's see. One comment is from Flintsy Hollers. Maybe if we give all our representatives a flat salary instead of a daily per diem, they will have more initiative to close business in a single session. What do you think about that? I mean, is that a good idea to flatline their salaries? Don't give them per diem, which would be a disincentive for them, or an incentive for them to get their decisions together. So what do you think about that? Again, Rob Maness is coming back, I'm sure. His internet is bad. Here's another comment here from Leslie Harris Crochette. How about investigating the Medicaid fraud that has run rampant for years instead of taking tops from the kids who have busted their butts and earned it? That's, I think it's a legitimate question. You want to cut tops for incoming high school freshmen, that's one thing, but the kids who did everything they were told already should get what they earned. So tops versus Medicaid. Rob, are you there? Hello? Are you there? Okay. I can't seem to hear you, so um, I think what we're going to do is this. I think, again, Rob is in Indiana. It looks like he's having some problems right now in terms of internet. For those people watching, I do want to say that Jim Brown and I, and maybe one or two other people, will be talking today at 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock today. We'll be talking about some of these issues and some national issues. I'm going to see if I can get Rob to maybe join us and maybe kind of make it a lively discussion. Rob, are you there?
Hello.
Okay, so you're sideways, but we got your voice back. Okay.
How's that?
Okay, that's a little bit better. So
Got it back?
yeah, yeah. So real quickly, what I was just reading a couple of comments while you were gone. Again, reminding people that your internet is really corny. The fact that you're in Indiana right now in the cornfield in the rain, and that's why apparently the Wi-Fi is acting up. So having said that, I read some of the comments. Medicaid fraud versus tops. Why not investigate and deal with Medicaid fraud and leave tops to us? That's really, I think, what one of the our viewers said. Another viewer said, "Hey, why are we paying per diem? That doesn't make any sense. Just give them a flat revenue, a flat income, not per diem, and that way, if they work the entire year, basically they only get the set amount of money."
Well, I would rather, on that issue, I would rather we just pay pure expenses, and let them recover their expenses, and that's it. I think we would save a ton of money like that, and not give salaries to legislators. But on TOPS and Medicaid, we should do both. We should look at every single program and evaluate them. On TOPS, what's our graduation rate at 4 years? TOPS is intended to help somebody get to a 4-year college degree. Our graduation rates at the 4-year level are at 36%. Why? In other government programs that I've mentioned here before, such as in the military, if you commit to a 4-year college, say at a service academy, and you don't finish, then you have to pay that money back to the federal government that provided it for those years that you go. And that gives a really strong incentive for folks to finish that college and then serve out their commitment. The other thing is, if we're going to pay for kids to go to college here, then then maybe they should be required to serve at minimum wage for 2 years at the state government level, and pay that back once they do get a 4-year college degree while they're entering the job market. There are different ways that we can put controls on the program that can save revenue. And same thing with Medicaid. A lot of the folks on the Democrat side say, oh, you're attacking the poor people by saying they're frauds. That's not the case. The case is simply this. There's always fraud and abuse in a government program, whether it's at the federal or the state level, because human beings are human beings. Not all of us are Mr. and Ms. Nice Guys and gals that follow the law and follow the rules. I mean, that's just the way human beings and civilization is. So we should always be looking for Medicaid fraud. And if we have weak programs that look for that fraud, then we should beef those programs up. And it's really difficult to estimate what you can save. There are different estimates out there. But the point is, let's not focus on saying that, picking on the poor people that are getting Medicaid. Let's just make sure we've got good fraud and abuse detection methodologies and programs, and we'll probably save some money there. More than likely, it's just a given, and it's been proven time and time again that you could do that. But we should do that with every program on a regular basis. There are programs that, like the medical marijuana program, that we put in the government's hands here in the state of Louisiana, big pieces of it, where the government's actually producing the plant and controlling the pharmacies. I mean, that's an expense there. Did we have to do it that way? Is there another way and another model that would work better for less cost? Those kind of things. Heck, the old charity hospital system, the privatization, I hear it all the time, especially from my friends on the left, that it's costing us much, much more to do the privatization system than it was the charity hospital system. Well, why aren't we gathering the political will to readdress that and take another hard look at that system and make sure that we do it for the best capability for the least cost that we can get? I mean, just because you've made a change like that doesn't mean that that change is going to be perfect, and we need to be looking at that system and figure out why that is, and really take a strong approach to fixing it, because Louisiana was world renowned for its charity hospital system and the quality of care it was giving for the price that it was getting. So, I know that that doesn't sound like a conservative coming, when I'm talking that way, but it is a conservative perspective. We've made decisions in our society that the government should provide certain things, and taking care of the poor is one of those things that we've made a decision long ago that we should be addressing. And if that charity hospital system is now costing so much that we're going to end up closing them, then we really got to take another look at that and readdress that. And maybe it's time to look at going back to some modified version somewhere in between the two that would be a lot more cost effective. I mean, we should look at all programs. You got to put those sacred cows on both sides of the aisle up on the shelf and take a pragmatic look at this, or you're never going to get the job done.
Okay, let me just read this one comment, and then we'll talk a few minutes about some national issues for a few minutes. Otherwise, so many things going on. So, Joni Friedman Lagasse says, response to Tim, says Florida has over $67 billion in tourism revenue alone. Louisiana has almost $10 billion. We're a poor state. Our revenue just is not there. We have a revenue issue, not a spending issue. We don't make enough money to support the necessary state functions. So I just wanted to read that. I mean, obviously, that's the core issue. I think in everything that we do, statewide, nationally, etc., and that is, do we have a revenue problem, or do we have a spending problem, or both, a combination of both. I just wanted to read that. I know what your response is going to be, I think. So let's just move on to the national issue. Pick one, please.
Well, I'll just touch on that. We have not taken the hard looks at subsidies that we pay out before people file their taxes and corporations and other incentives for businesses and those kind of things. And we give away millions and millions of dollars before a tax is paid here, and we haven't taken a hard look at that either. So, there are all kinds of things that we need to take a hard look at to make sure that we are spending our money on our priorities first, and trying to live within our means and then grow our economy so that we can increase that means. Those are the issues I see. And that may surprise you, that my response, but it doesn't mean that.
No, it doesn't, because you mentioned it before. And and by the way, this past I think it was Tuesday, we did an interview with a super fiscal hawk, former Representative Guyman, who pretty much have the same views, and which is, hey, we need to look across the board. We need to look at the sacred cows on both sides, and that's pretty much what you've been saying too. No question about that. So no, it doesn't surprise me at all. So
especially when you see that we're number 2 in the nation for corporate giveaways. Yeah. We're number 2 in the nation for corporate giveaways.
Right.
If you saw the information that came out, we really got to take a look at those programs and get them right sized if we're going to keep them at all.
Yeah. No,
anyway,
I agree. I do. So, pick a national issue. I have about less than 5 minutes.
Okay, kids in cages. Very disappointing that the media that I call the fake news media has made this crazy emotional issue out of kids being separated from their parents that are entering the country illegally. I'm not talking about people legally applying for asylum at a legal port of entry. I'm not talking about people that are showing up at a port of entry and trying to legally get in. I'm talking about people that are coming in illegally for 2 reasons. I've seen the left go absolutely crazy on social media and in the media, the corporate media, where they have the biggest megaphone on this issue of kids being separated from their parents, and trying to blame solely the Trump administration, when the Trump administration, Mr. Trump promised he would enforce current law. That's what they promised. That's what the issue was when Sessions came out and said we're going to have a no tolerance policy and those kind of things. Was we're enforcing current law, which means you're going to be prosecuted if you come into the country illegally. And if you have kids with you, our system's going to look at those like they always have when you're getting prosecuted, because we have kids separated from their parents daily, probably hourly in this country, when parents are getting arrested and put in jail and those kind of things that are American citizens or anybody that's legally visiting here. It's just very disappointing because, in 2014, when we first saw these kids in cages, which is what the pictures that initially the media put up as trying to say that was the Trump administration, were really from the Obama administration. You can go back. I leave my Twitter feed. I never erase anything, whether it's a mistake on my part or not, or even makes me look bad. Go back and look at my Twitter feed. Go back and look at my Facebook feeds at COL Rob Maness, and you'll see that I was appalled, and I said it was inhumane that those kids were being put in cages and those kind of things. Then, we've improved since then, and I've seen the pictures and the videos and seen reporters that aren't part of the fake news media that have seen these facilities now, and it's much better. That's number one. They're not in cages anymore. That was the Obama administration that did that. Number 2 is this emotional response is keeping everybody from addressing the real issue. And the real issue is that we need to make sure we secure our borders and build that wall, and address the issue that why are these people coming? Why are they coming here? What's behind it? Because there is no such thing as economic asylum, Steve. And to conflate the issues of asylum and illegal entry into a nation, and advocate for having no border control of a nation, or or catching and then releasing people that have broken our law into our society, never to be heard from again when 2 years is up and they're supposed to come back before that immigration judge. That's all wrong. It's wrong because we're a nation and we're a nation of laws. And I was glad to see the president took some action to try to do some executive action within the limits of the law to prevent the unnecessary separation of families. But sometimes it's necessary, and that's the other part of the second reason I'm very disappointed, because large majorities, 90% of these kids have been trafficked, been used, and those kids that we're holding, but we're providing housing for, have been trafficked. That's why you can't see pictures of them. And it's a huge problem on the drug cartel side and the narco terrorism side of using kids and then trafficking them into things like sex trafficking systems once they get into the country. So it's very disappointing that the left would take this and try to make it an issue that's just flat out opposed to Donald Trump, when really it's something that's been going on for a long time. I've been opposed to it, but also there are good reasons why in 1997 the consent decree was agreed to by the Clinton administration that requires that separation after 20 days. And that gets to the trafficking system, the human trafficking issue, which is a really big issue when it comes to this area. It's just really disappointing that that this has been blown up into just an explosive emotional issue. I've been called a Nazi, an internment camp supporter, and those kind of things more times this week than I can remember ever been called that. And it's just not right. It's not right. Because there are good people on both sides of the aisle that want to address that issue. But we've got to do it right, or we put tens of thousands of kids in more danger than they already were on the trafficking side.
Okay, let me just quickly respond and to say this, that I really don't remember what happened during the Obama situation. So let's assume everything that you said is accurate, okay? And I'm not gonna go there. I'm just gonna assume that everything that you said is accurate. Where my issue is about this is the credibility and the efficiency. First dealing with the efficiency. Apparently, the Trump administration had reason to believe that this was going to happen, and they didn't make the provisions to be able to handle this type of population, in part because of the fact that, ironically, the American economy is doing so well. So those people who are trying to take care of their families, they're trying to get in for economic purposes. Also, there is the political asylum issues. I don't think we can deny that that there aren't people who are coming or trying to come into the country based upon that. So I think the major issue in terms of why this has exploded the way it has is because the Trump administration was so focused upon showing that it was strong that it did not, it just messed up. It wasn't efficient. And I think that, that got him slapped in the face. The other issue was just a credibility issue. The thing is that you had so many different messages coming out of the White House. You had the Attorney General admitting that it was being used as a deterrent. You had Kelly saying the same thing, and then you had the Homeland Security Secretary saying that she was shocked or insulted that somebody would raise that issue. I mean, come on, you just can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. And I think that the fact that Donald Trump blamed Democrats when, it's not just the Democrats. I mean, George Bush signed the legislation in 2008. Um, you know, this, blaming one party only, as I think the president does, is wrong. Is wrong. He's the one who just made this decision. It was his decision. Whether or not the law was bad or not, he made a decision based on bad law. He didn't take responsibility. And then I got to tell you, and really, I've got to say this. I was personally insulted that this man, the President of the United States, came out there after being slammed, reverses policy, and then says that this has been going on for 60 years and that he is going, and by his executive order, he's going to change it. That reminded me, quite frankly, of the birther issue, where for 6 years or so, he was the voice of the birther movement, even during his election campaign, although it was more subdued. And then what does he do? When he needs the black votes, he all of a sudden comes out and says that President Obama is an American. That's it. Did he apologize? No. Did he explain how he now, or how he then figured out that Obama was American? No. And so taking credit, where he said that he stopped the birther movement, no, he didn't start the birther movement, but he exploded it. He generated it. And so he did the same thing here. It's a credibility issue. I'm sorry. I agree with you that we have laws. We need to figure out what to do. I know that Tim Matthews and Lynn Matthews and I and others are having some real interesting discussions about the wall. I think we need to have that discussion. I'm not necessarily opposed to it. I really want to know, is that the best way to go? Is there another way to go where we can deal with this issue that is a major issue that has obviously become more apparent just in the last couple of weeks? Your last response?
Yeah, I think that on the wall, I mean, you need to go down and talk to ranchers that are on the southern border in Texas and New Mexico and Arizona and California, and they'll tell you, they're the ones that'll tell you, hey, I've got a barbed wire fence here, and you got these narco traffickers and mules, which are the kids that are being trafficked, bringing narcotics in and then being moved on into the sex trafficking world. You talk to them about it, they're going to tell you, yeah, we've got to have a wall because the Border Patrol guys, they don't have enough tools in their toolkit. They don't have enough people, and they don't have enough resources. And those folks that live out in those wide open spaces would say that. Now, as far as deterrent, go back and look at the Jeff Sessions press conference where he said, we're going to deter these folks. He's talking about enforcement of current law. I've run on that position. Now, one of the byproducts of the enforcement of current law is they have to abide by the consent decree that was done, that the Clinton administration agreed to in 1997, that separates kids from their parents after 20 days in detention. That was designed to not put kids into adult detention centers, is to prevent that from happening. So we've got to enforce the current law. We cannot be elected officials. And the reason why Nielsen was insulted is that it's her job to execute the law of the land. That's the insult that's coming here. And she's not part of the Department of Justice. She's the Secretary of Homeland Security. It's her people's job to enforce current law. So I don't blame her for being insulted at all.
Well, then,
but I don't blame folks like you from being insulted either, Steve. I mean, the president, he says all kinds of crazy stuff. I've said many times I don't agree with everything he says and does. However, the left really pushed hard on him to sign his executive order, and now they're not happy with it, even though it does what they were pushing so screaming. And I mean, it's absolutely horrific the rhetoric that's been being used, and even threats against the guy's son. I mean, Peter Fonda just did some crazy statements
really
on Twitter
I mean, really
yesterday.
nuts.
It's just nuts what was going on. He says some nuts things sometimes too, but not that kind of stuff. I mean, he's never advocated that I'm aware of. He hasn't advocated for somebody's kid to be raped by a pedophile in a cage, like this kind of rhetoric that's been going on. So it's just absolutely crazy out there, and people need to take a step back and look at this from a pragmatic perspective and a perspective of protecting the American citizen and the legal immigrants to this country, and protecting those kids that are being used and abused to get here. I just saw a story that broke this morning, I believe, that the mainstream fake news media had run it as a little girl and her mom being abused and everything, and then they get the family's dad on video. He's mad at the mom for putting the child into that trip so dangerous, and that it was all an absolute lie. So we've got to get our act together when it comes to that. But I'm still an advocate that we have to enforce current law. Now, if they want to back off of that dissent decree, that's fine, but it's current law, and we've got to enforce it. And it was put in place by moral judges and moral people in the Clinton administration that agreed to it.
Well, here's the thing. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not saying that you shouldn't enforce the law. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is that you got to do it wisely. You have to do it smart. You have to do it efficiently. And if you are in a situation where you cannot do it justly, then you need to rethink this and redo whatever you need to do in order to accomplish what you want to do, which is to enforce the law. So anyway, listen, here's my take, and we're going to end it here if you don't mind, and that is, I really don't care. Do you? So that's a good one. Yeah. So okay, take care of yourself. I'm gonna go ahead and hit a couple buttons, and let me do that and end the show if I could find the right screen. Bear with me.